First of all, I want to thank the organization for accepting the little abstract I sent in, for allowing me to present this talk here. Oops, let me see. There you go. As you may have seen on the boxes around my presentation here, I come from Belgium. It was in Dutch, and even though this is a UK event, oddly enough, I've encountered 4 other Belgians, so I guess this is pretty international after all. Or something's going on with Belgium. That's definitely the case. So I'm a doctoral researcher from the University of Ghent, and I'm also active in host a bouquet of free thinkers organizations. So that's the logo there of the Belgian humanist free thinkers movement. So it's a big discussion. What should humanism do with transhumanism? And I want to talk a bit about an existential perspective on things. So this little enigmatic picture will be explained shortly. So I believe that enhancement technologies are really about liberation. And they are in fact technologies that allow us to become what we as humans have always been. If you look at the definitions of what mankind is and an accomplished human being is, in the humanist tradition, from Renaissance Mirandola over Enlightenment Kant to post-war existentialist Sartre, it has been that we are a fundamentally free, fundamentally self-shaping animal. So yes, these enhancement technologies are now making that to be the case in a very material, very confronting way. So it allows us to become what we really are, and that is not just free, but very, very free. And as such, it is very disruptive to a lot of people, very confronting. I believe not so much because it is invasive, as has been, as has came out of the audience in a question in an earlier session here. But I think a lot of people are so disturbed by enhancement technologies because it is eruptive, because it really brings to the fore the extreme extent into which we are free. And a lot of people actually consider liberation, even though everybody hypes up the word freedom. In truth, I believe, a lot of people do not really want to be all too free. So I will here present 3 quotes of a bit enigmatic arguments against enhancement. This one is from Alan Buchanan, who is actually not at all against enhancement and who has just published a new book, Beyond Humanity, a way to counter the President's Council on Bioethics famed report and notorious report against enhancement. But he touches on an interesting point. He says, the price of this liberation, it may be high. If we cannot convince ourselves that human nature provides significant constraints on pursuit of individual or social good, we may start to feel cast adrift in a sea of possibilities and just be completely at a loss as to what we should be doing with ourselves. Another enigmatic critique, it comes from Michael Sandel, who is one of the most outspoken attackers of enhancement, and in his book, The Case Against Perfection, he writes that the real problem is not so much the explosion, not the erosion of responsibility. As humility gives way, responsibility expands to daunting proportions. We attribute less to chance and more to choice. And one of the blessings of seeing ourselves as creatures of nature, God, or fortune is that we are not wholly responsible for the way we are. So here you see in the second sentence a very shady argument that really is I think, rooted in a concern for just psychological comfort and not so much a real philosophical argument. He just feels way more comfortable to say, let nature do the work, let God do the work, let fortune do the work, and leave me out of it. Interesting to see that this comes from a Harvard professor of political science. A third argument, also Sandel again, and also the environmentalist Bill McKibben, is really very, very strange. And this is in fact the final sentence, the closing sentence of Michael Sandel's book. And it is actually pretty hard to make sense of it, so very strange. So he says, there may be something appealing, even intoxicating, about the vision of human freedom unfettered by the given. The given is this bit of a mystifying word to express natural determinations or God-given aspects of our existence and so on. But he says that vision of freedom is flawed. It threatens to leave us with nothing to affirm or behold outside our own will. And Bill McKibben actually expresses quite the same sentiment when saying, should we ever escape our limits, our natural limits, we will become nothing. We become just like a vacuous potential of complete liberty, but really without a self-evident sense of drive and purpose, because we would just be radically free, be able to do whatever we want. So a lot of people, especially environmentalists like McKibben, often express in their more sentimental moments an urging actually to be like animals. They want to be, for instance, in this quote of Jonathan Franzen's recent stellar novel, Freedom, just came out, fantastic. I picked up this quote. A man in a very human predicament, which is horrible, full of tragedy, all things gone wrong, full of grief. Well, he looks at some birds, and then he says, he envied the bird for knowing nothing of what he knew. He would have swapped souls with it in a heartbeat, and the trade was a no-brainer. And the bird, with its lively indifference to him, and it's very important, I think, its sureness of physical selfhood, seemed well aware of how preferable it was to be the bird. So the thing is, humans, of course, are completely different. We've lost, due to our capacity for critical reflection on our own existence, we've lost this self-evident will to live. We must tackle, because we know about our mortality, and we also know about the fact that we can just choose for ourselves how to live our lives. Well, we must tackle fundamental problems of futility and absurdity to our existence. You can say that's one reason why we would want to live forever, maybe, if that would solve the thing. So now, what's so typical about humans is, of course, that we can opt out of life. We can say no to a life that's too pointless or too painful. And we don't simply live, we choose it. We affirm it in a Nietzschean way. We say yes to life, we turn our lives on. Because we also always, constantly have the philosophical dagger over our heads. We actually have this on-off switch button, existential switch, explaining the first image I gave there. This is the classic existentialist stance of humans. The difference between us and animals is we have an on-off switch. And we're all the time at liberty to turn our lives off. And as we do not do it, we in fact affirm our life. Now, why do we choose life? Traditional answers to the problems of futility and absurdity have been that our life is God-given, God-driven. And Rick Warren, in one of his TED Talks, one of the charismatic preachers of America, and author of the #1 best-selling book, Purpose-Driven Life, he says, if you want to find out what you should be doing with your life, you need to take a look at your shape. Of course, that eventually boils down to just crazy creationism and things like that, but it really is a fundamental urge of people to feel created, to have something in them that gives them a sense of what to do. If they're just there with their freedom, they're just completely at a loss. But of course we are God-forsaken evolutionary accidents, and our origins, evolutionary origins, are meaningless, and if we would look at them morally, they would just be outright mean. And so we are also without absolute imperatives. But a lot of people have found a way to answer this existential crisis, this God-forsaken condition, by just saying, no worries, all we need is passion. And Monty Python are the best advocates for this stance. Life may be quite absurd, and that's the final word. But, you know, just give voice, look on the bright side of life. And that then comes down to the fact that a lot of people have just accepted the fact that they've lost God, they've lost all external lodestones on how to live, no problem. Because you can still wake up every day and feel driven, you feel passions, you just go with the flow. And even if they come from completely crazy and absurd evolutionary origins, well, we can work with them in a more humane way. So, this is the common, no-nonsense, get-on-with-it position. Interestingly, it is also a sort of appeal to human nature.